ॐ तिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय राधिकायै प्रियात्मने श्रीमद्भक्तिवेदान्त नारायण गोस्वामीति नामे। श्री कृष्ण लीला कथने सुदक्षम औदार्य माधुर्य गुणैषयुक्तम वरम वरेण्यम पुरुषम महांतम श्रीनारायणं त्वं शिरसा नमामि। त्रिदण्डिनां भक्तशिरोमणिं च श्रीकृष्णपादाब्जधृतये हृदि चैतन्यलीलामृतसारसारं नारायणं त्वं सततं प्रपद्ये। नमो महावाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेम प्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्याय नाम्ने गौरत्विषे नमः। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमस्तुते। श्याम सुंदर शिखंड शेखर स्मेरहास मुरली मनोहर राधिका रसिक माम कृपा निधे स्वप्रिया चरण किंकरीं कुरु। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी श्री राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। तवैवास्मि न जीवामि त्वया विना इति विज्ञाय राधे तन्मय माम चरनन्तिके। भक्त्या विहीनापराधलक्षै क्षिप्ताश्च कामादितरङ्गमध्यै कृपामयि त्वं शरणं प्रपन्न वृंदे नमस्ते चरणारविन्दम्। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। So first of all, I offer my unlimited obeisances unto the divine lotus feet of my most worshipful spiritual master, His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. My unlimited obeisances unto the divine lotus feet of Thakur Sachidanand Srila Bhaktivinoda and to his illustrious son Srila Bhakti Siddhant Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, whose divine disappearance day is today. So, we have been studying the fourth chapter of Jayavdhanam, and in this fourth chapter, Lahari Mahashay, he has been asking some questions from Vaishnav Das ji. So last time we had discussed that Vaishnav Das, Babaji, he explained that there are three important tenets of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy, the concepts that he gave. And they are the first three things, the Bhagavad Tattva, Jeev Tattva, and Maya Tattva, three. And then Sambandha Gyan, Abhidheya, and Prayojan. So there is the Supreme Lord, then Jiva, the living entities, and then Maya, which is the illusory energy. And then he said there are three other important things: the Sambandh Gyan, which is the relationship between these three, and then the Abhidheya, the process by which we attain the Supreme, and then the Prayojan, which is our goal. And all our scriptures are describing these three things only in great detail. So first of all, he started explaining about Bhagavad Tattva. And Lahadi Mahashaya asked many questions. And the last question he had asked was that it is, we understand and we hear that Krishna took birth and then he had many, pastimes he performed and then he died. So if this is the case, then how is it that he is eternal? So this was the last question that we had discussed. And then Babaji Mahashaya said that his form, his pastimes, and his leaving from this world are all divine. As Krishna also says in Gita, Janam Karam Chame Divyam Evam Yoveti Tattvataha, that my appearance in this world and my pastimes in this world all are divine, they are transcendental, they are not subject to the rules of this world. So last time I shared one example that Shri Gurudev would give to explain this. Shri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also explains this with one another beautiful example, which I had shared in the Hindi class last time. So he explains that one time there was a family of acrobats. So they would perform many kind of amazing tricks. So they went to the king's palace and they performed, this family of husband, wife, and their two children, they performed some amazing feats. Seeing this, the queen and the king, everyone was just awestruck. So queen wanted to give her very precious pearl garland, pearl necklace to them. So she gave it, and one of the sons came and took that pearl necklace. Now the other one started fighting with him that, oh, give this to me because I had done a better performance. So they both started fighting. And in that, they just took out their swords and chopped off each other's heads. Seeing this, the mother and father were grief stricken and they also chopped off their heads. Now, all these four were dead. And all the people in that palace, in the king's court, who were just a few minutes ago, were all clapping and they were so happy seeing this amazing feats. Now they were all very grief stricken. Anyways, the bodies were taken away. After 3 days, a letter comes to the king, and the letter says, "O king, you gave us a pearl necklace for some simple feats that we showed, but our last performance, which was the best of all the performances, you did not give us any award for that." So reading this, the king was amazed that they all died in front of me. And in the letter it said, "Oh, we are all alive and we are all at our home. You can come and see." So the king went with the queen and with his ministers, and they saw that this whole family was perfectly fine. So just by the illusion, they had created this impression by that they were all dead, and everyone actually believed that they had died. So Shri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that if an ordinary person in this world can create such an illusion, then that Supreme Lord, who is the supreme among all the illusionists, why can't he do something so simple that everyone saw that one arrow hit his foot, and people who are atheists, who don't believe in the Lord, they thought that he had passed away, he died. But the devotees saw that he, in his own transcendental form, along with all his eternal associates, went to his divine abode. So this is what he is explaining, that he is divine Sachidanandamay. So then Lahadi Mahashaya then raised another question that so he says that if that is the case, then why such descriptions have been given in Mahabharata and other Shastras? Because we hear these descriptions like this, arrow hit Krishna, and then the similar cases about other past, some other incarnations also. So then Babaji says that the eternal truth defies description, for it is beyond words. So he's saying that that supreme absolute, he is beyond our senses. By our words, by our language, we cannot understand, we cannot describe, we cannot comprehend his divinity, his transcendental nature. It is the pure soul in his spiritual aspect sees the transcendental form and pastimes of Shri Krishna. But when he describes that supreme reality in words, it appears just like worldly, mundane history. So he's saying that one can experience that supreme absolute within their heart in a pure, when the heart is purified, then you can experience him. But if we try to explain in words, first of all, the language is so limited, cannot describe someone who's beyond our senses, right? How, if you just think about how amazing his qualities are, Krishna's powers are, we cannot even just describe this universe, which is a small part of his entire creation. If even if you start thinking how gigantic the universe is and the kind of complexities are there, and then there's not one universe but unlimited universes, it's impossible to describe. So when we can't even describe what is mundane, how can we describe what is completely beyond our senses, beyond the strength of the words to describe? As you know, it is said that the Sheshnag, who has hundreds and thousands of hoods, he is describing the glories of Krishna since time immemorial, but still not able to describe it. So I said one can experience one's within one's purified heart, but when you try to describe, then the words do not do justice to his transcendental, this transcendental reality. Those who are eligible to extract the essence from Shastras such as Mahabharata experience Krishna's pastimes as they are. However, when people of mundane intelligence hear these descriptions, they interpret them in different ways. So the same pastime, right? But when those who have no faith in Krishna, those who are atheists, materialists, or those who are Brahmavadis, when they hear these pastimes or when they narrate these pastimes, they describe these simply as some epic, right, stories. Nowadays in Indian language, also Mahabharata is called an epic. Epic means something which is not true, right? But Mahabharata is the true history of the greater India. So many times, people say, oh, these are mythological stories. Many times, we all grew up hearing this, that these are mythological stories. But these are not myths. Myth means something which is not true. But this is how those who have no blessings or association of devotees, they understand this way. There's so many, without taking anyone's names, so many who even give discourses on Bhagavatam, even on Ramayan, but they do not agree or they do not believe that Lord Ram or Lord Krishna are supreme personalities, that they have a transcendental form, they have qualities, they have pastimes, they have a transcendental abode. But the devotees, when they hear this, right, so they get the real transcendental essence of these pastimes. So then so it is said in the Upanishads that na ayam atma pravachanen labdhya, that one cannot understand the supreme simply by hearing discourses. Which kind of discourses? The discourses that are given by those who are not devotees. Na medhya na bahuna shrutena. So by one's intellect, one cannot understand him. How one can understand him? Swayam ev spurti atah Shri Krishna namadi na bhavet grahim indrahi Sevan mukhe hi jihvado swayam ev spurti adaha. So it is said that Ataha Shri Krishna Namadi na bhavet grahim indrahi. That Krishna's transcendental name, his qualities, his pastimes, one cannot understand by one's material senses. Sevan mukhe hi jihvado, but when the tongue and the other senses are engaged in sevan mukhe hi jihvado. So when these senses are engaged in his service, then the same senses, the same mundane senses who don't have the capacity to comprehend him, but by engaging them in his service, then what happens? Swayam ev spurti adaha, he himself manifests in the heart. So this is what he will explain further as well. That this is manifested in the heart of a devotee. One cannot simply by reading books or by intellectual exercise understand the Supreme. So then Lahari Mahasaya, he asks this question that when we meditate on the form of Shri Krishna, then this conception that arises in the heart is limited by time and space, that he has a certain form, he appeared at a certain time. Then how can one transcend such limitations and meditate on Krishna's actual, his transcendental form? So again, a very beautiful question he asks. And Vaishnav Das Babaji, he says that meditation is an action of the mind. So just like this verse I was describing, so he says when we are meditating, it is with what type of mind? If it is with our conditioned mind, then that mind will not be able to understand the transcendental form of Sri Hari. But he says, as long as the mind is not fully spiritualized, one's meditation cannot be spiritual, cannot be chinmay. So our mind is the man, which is in Hindi is called man. So mind is like a mirror. So just like we see our face in the mirror, the mind is the medium through which we ultimately make a connection with the Lord, but not with the conditioned mind. Because right now on this mind, there is so much anarthas that are contaminating it. So just like on a mirror, when there is layers of dust, you go out to travel, and when you come back, there is dust all over the furniture, everywhere. And on the mirror also, there is a thick layer of dust accumulated. So if you try to see your face in that mirror, then you would not be able to see. So what do you have to do? You have to wipe it. The first time you wipe it, you may not be able to see it still very clearly. Then you have to wipe it again. So by wiping like this continuously, you might be able to, then you will start seeing your face. So this is Cheto Darpan Marjanam. In Shikshashtakam, the 8 verses that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave, in the very first verse, he is glorifying the holy name Shri Krishna Sankirtanam and how potent it is. Cheto Darpan Marjanam Bhav Mahadavani Nirvapanam. That it cleanses the mirror. Which mirror? The mind, the chitta. And when it becomes clean, when it becomes spiritualized, cleaning means it becomes spiritualized. It leaves its mundane nature. Because see, right now we only think of all materialistic things. The mind is filled with so many lusty desires, so many unwanted desires. But when slowly, slowly they all go away, then contamination goes away, then he says, bhakti purifies the mind so that it gradually becomes spiritual. And when one meditates with the mind that has become purified in that way, such meditation certainly becomes chinmaya. So he says only by bhakti. So that what that means that by the other processes, right? So many, there are other ways now people teach so many different types of meditations. So as last time also I was explaining that first of all, for most of those meditations, their goal is not to realize the Supreme. Their goal is just to get some peace, right? So just some temporary peace, which is fine, which is also fine, but they're doing those meditations not with a transcendental purpose, right? So, but even, and the second thing is that those processes don't even have the capability of making one realize one's true self, as well as the and have darshan of the Supreme Lord. But he says by bhakti only the mind is purified. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita also, bhaktya mam abhijanati, that only by bhakti, and this is very clearly explained by Krishna in Gita and also in Bhagavatam, in all the scriptures, that only by bhakti, bhakti is the only process by which one can absolutely purify one's mind. So he said, then that meditation certainly becomes Chinmay. Chinmay means transcendental spiritual. So this other transcendental meditation, which is very, I don't know how much famous it is today, but there was a point, a time when they were a famous group, but there was nothing transcendental about it, because transcendental means something which is beyond the material conception. And who's transcendental? The Supreme Absolute, the Lord. So he says such meditation then becomes Chinmay. So when the devotees, they chant Krishna's name, then the material conception doesn't touch them. So internally they are situated in the spiritual world as they meditate on Krishna's daily pastimes and relish the bliss of confidential service. So see, this is again something very important. He's saying everything about bhakti is internal, not externally. Of course, we are performing many activities. Those are important, especially in our conditioned state. They're all part of Vaidhi Bhakti. And, we should be performing those activities to slowly engage our mind, right? But as the mind starts getting purified and it is able to internally meditate. So in Chaitanya Charitamrita it says, Antare Nishthakar Bahe Lok Vyavahar, that internally meditate on the Supreme Lord, Bahe Lok Vyavahar, but externally continue doing your duties. So this is the trick. This is the trick of Krishna consciousness. Bhakti does not mean that we give up everything and just sit in one room and just constantly chant. Yes, we take time and we should sit peacefully and chant our rounds. And it also does not mean that when we finish chanting those rounds, then for the rest of the day, we don't take the holy name. No. Antare Nishtha. Inside the heart, we should always have that meditative mood. So he says those devotees are internally meditating on the pastimes of the Lord and relishing that bliss. Bahe lok vyavahar, but externally keep doing whatever is required for your social obligations, for your family, and for your own body. Right? So Achirat Krishna tomay kare udhar, koribe udhar. So like this, Krishna will very quickly deliver you from this material world. So this is what he says, that how one's meditation can be purified. So by hearing this, see, when we hear this, then, when we hear the pastimes of great devotees, that how they would meditate. Yesterday also I was telling about Pujyapal Shri Bhakti Vedant Vaman Goswami Maharaj, who was the god brother of our Gurudev, very elevated, great Acharya. So he would so absorb many times in meditation that sometimes in the morning he would be just lying on his bed and the devotees will be worried, oh, this is a morning time, what will people think? He's not sitting and chanting and he's not doing his other spiritual activities. So one time one of his servants said, Gurudev, it's so long you have been lying, please get up. And then he slowly, when he came out of his internal meditation, he said, oh, Swaminiji means Srimati Radhika has given me so many duties to do, so many services. Then unless I finish, how can I do something else? So this was in his internal mood. He was serving constantly. And there's so many such. We have seen our Gurudev, even when he was manifesting his pastimes to leave this world. And, I was in the room. Some of the days I got, by his mercy, some opportunity to serve during those days. And Gurudev will be just lying quietly on his bed with his eyes closed. But then sometimes he would say things like, one time he mentioned that bring this particular spice, and we had never heard that name of that spice. And then devotees were wondering what this spice is. And then someone did some research and they found out a very special name of a spice, which is in some scripture mentioned in the spiritual world. When Srimati Radhika is cooking, she is using that spice. So Gurudev, even though externally we were thinking, oh, his body, is suffering. Of course, he's not suffering, but many times people may think like that. But see, even in that stage, he was internally completely absorbed in meditating on the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. So this is what it says in Chaitanya Charitamrita, that one should internally meditate, but externally perform all one's responsibilities. So hearing this, Lahadi Mahashay, he said, oh, please give me also that spiritual realization. See, sometimes when we hear these pastimes, we also crave, or can you give me that realization also? So now what does Babaji Mahashay says? He says, well, you should abandon all material doubts and mundane logic and constantly apply yourself to Sri Nam. Spiritual realization will quickly arise within you of its own accord. So what he's saying is that this is something we have to realize on our own. We can get the teachings from the Guru. He can teach the process. He can give us the mercy. But then we have to perform how? Without any duplicity and with deep faith, with a mood of surrender. If one constantly chants the holy name, then certainly without a doubt, the mind will become purified. And as I was, quoting this verse, Swayam ev spurti adaha, Krishna will himself, this realization, the spiritual realization will automatically manifest. He says, of its own accord, right? So therefore, we should not become very mental about these things, right? Sometimes we should have faith that Krishna will certainly give me his mercy, because he is the most merciful. That's one of his qualities, the most merciful. But also not become too much mental about it, because then sometimes people get very frustrated. Oh, I've been chanting for so long. I was promised that I will get spiritual realization, and I'm still not feeling anything. No, we are not doing this as some sort of business, right? Oh, I have chanted for so many days and so many months that I should get some realization. It is done in the mood of service and surrender, and then automatically it will happen. So many devotees, they are living examples of this, right? They have, through their lives, attained such deep realizations, and that's why they continue to engage in devotional service. So he says, give up all kind of mundane logic, and the more you strive to initiate the flow of Nam Ras, the more your material shackles will become loosened. So he says, the more you chant the holy name, the more this material shackles will automatically start loosening up, and the spiritual dimension will then manifest in your heart. So then he says, now he has understood, okay, he cannot give it to me, right? So yesterday also I was giving this example that if someone has not ever eaten a mango, right, and you know what mangoes are, and let's say you are in a place and there are some people who have never seen mangoes, and you tell them, oh, mangoes are very delicious, this is the king of the fruits. Now, how will that person realize or understand that this is the king of fruits, right? So for that, first of all, he has to take your word. He has to believe what you are saying, and then he has to take that fruit, he has to peel it, he has to cut a piece, and he has to eat it, and then relish the sweetness of mango. So similarly, we have to follow the instructions, and in due course of time, one will realize the sweetness of the holy name, and through that the sweetness of the Supreme Lord. Why? Because this holy name is non-different from Krishna himself. So Lahari Mahasaya understood this, that yes, okay, this is something we have to do on our own, right? So he says, okay, please be merciful and explain what that spiritual experience is, right? What would it look like? What would it feel like? Even though I understand that you cannot give me that experience, I have to experience myself, but what that experience be like? So then Babaji Mahasaya gives another very beautiful example. See, this is where the language is so limited, right? Can only explain up to a certain extent. He says the mind is brought to a standstill when it tries to understand the truth through words. So he says the truth is achintya. In Sanskrit, it says um, avang, uh, so it is beyond the purview of the mind and the words. Avang manasah gocharaha. Avang manaso gocharaha. So vak means vani, the words, and mansa means mind. So he's beyond the words and the mind. So he says the mind is brought to a standstill, meaning the mind becomes completely overwhelmed if it tries to understand through this material way, when it tries to understand the truth through words, right? So that means the mind and the words don't have the capacity to understand. The truth can be realized only through culture and spiritual bliss. Give up all argumentation and simply chant Sri Nam for several days, then the power of Nam will automatically dispel all of your doubts and you will not have to inquire further from anyone in this regard. So he's saying, have that faith that the name, the Nam, Krishna Nam Chintamani Krishna Chaitanya Ras Vigraha Purna Shuddhaha Nitya Muktaha Abhinatvat Nam Namina. So if you have faith in this verse, that Nam, the name of the Lord, is like the Chintamani. It's like the touchstone. Krishna Chaitanya Ras Vigraha, it is the form of the Lord himself. And Purna, it is complete, it is eternal, it is powerful, and it is non-different from the Lord. So by having that faith, if you chant, he said, you will achieve that realization. So then Lahari Mahasaya says, okay, I have understood this, that by drinking the liquid ras of Sri Krishna Nam with great faith, so I will chant Sri Nam, but first he says, I want to fully understand this Sambandh Gyan. So this is good quality of a disciple. So he's first trying to understand things very clearly. So Sambandh Gyan, remember, so these are the three things that Mahaprabhu has explained. And the first one is Sambandh Gyan. And as I was explaining last time, in the second section of Jaiv Dharam, this will be explained in great detail. But here he's giving a brief explanation. So Sambandh means relationship. Gyan means knowledge. So the knowledge of the relationship between the Jiva, the living entity, and the Supreme Lord, between the Supreme Lord and the illusory energy, and between the illusory energy and the Jiva. So understanding this, then if one engages in the devotional process, then he will attain the destination, the goal very quickly. Because without, just like if you leave the home without knowing where you want to go and not being very clear about your destination, then there is a high probability that you will not reach your destination. But if you leave your home very clear about which place you are going, then there is a very high probability that you will get there. So he says, please explain the Sambandh Gyan. So he says, so he says, yes, Babaji says, yes, that is the best way. You must have a sound understanding of Sambandh Gyan. So then Lahari Mahasaya says that, okay, I have understood about the Bhagavad Tattva, and now please explain to me about the Jiva Tattva. So he asks the question about the living entity. So before understanding Sambandh between these three, he wants to understand, he has understood the Bhagavad Tattva. Now he wants to understand the Jeev Tattva and the Maya Tattva, and then the relationship between these three. So now Babaji Mahashay gives the answer to this question. And this we have discussed in the previous chapters also, so I will not go in detail. He is, because he had asked a similar question from Premhans Das Babaji, his Gurudev. So, but in summary, he explains that the living entity is the manifested from Krishna's marginal potency, Tatastha Shakti, and is non-different from him in quality, but the difference is in quantity. We are very atomic, whereas he is supreme. And then he says, why it is Tatastha or marginal? Because has the qualities of the Lord, so he can be under the spiritual potency, but also because of being atomic, can come under or does come under the impact of the illusory energy. So just like that margin between the water and the land, it can goes either under the water or become part of the land. That's why it is called Tatastha Shakti. The jivas are chit parmanu, means atomic particles of spiritual atomic particles, which means that they are atomic entities of pure consciousness. These jivas can be bound in the material world because they're tiny, but since they're constituted of pure consciousness, if they simply acquire a little spiritual power, they can also become eternal residents of the spiritual world. So they have the potency. Unlike things that are material, like a table, I'm sitting on a chair, this chair can never become part of the spiritual world because it's completely mundane. My physical body can never go to the spiritual world, but my soul, because it is spiritual, can go back to the spiritual world. Then he says that two types of jivas, two types of living entities: mukta, who are liberated, and baddha, who are conditioned, bound. Those who live in the spiritual world are mukta. They have never come to the spiritual world. So in that also, there are those who are nitya siddha, who are eternally, and this is again going to be explained in much more detail later on, that who have never been into this material world, and those who are sadhan siddha, who by the process of devotional service go to the spiritual world. And then he says there are two types of conditioned living entities. One of them is called Anudit Vivek, and the other one is called Udit Vivek. This also we discussed in the last chapter. Those who are spiritually unconscious, they are called Anudit Vivek. And those who are spiritually conscious, they are Udit Vivek. So here, Vivek means the ability to discriminate what is right and wrong, not from a material perspective, but from a spiritual perspective. And as we discussed before, he says it is only the human beings who have adopted the path of Vaishnavism are spiritually awake, for no one except the Vaishnavas genuinely endeavor to attain the supreme spiritual goal. So he says, if we speak objectively, now sometimes people may say, oh, you are thinking that you are the only people who are right. No, that is not the case, right? If we just say objectively, right? So of course, different people have different understanding of what spirituality is. What nowadays a lot of people say, oh, we are not religious, but we are spiritual. But I don't think they still understand what being spiritual means. So different people have different understanding, but if we go by what the scriptures are saying, right, spiritual means the one who understands that I am an eternal servant of Krishna, that he is a supreme Lord, attaining him is the goal of my life. He says this clarity, objectively speaking, right, it is only the Vaishnavas. Why? Because they are worshipping the Lord in his transcendental form through the process of devotional service. They are not, doing all these other different types of rituals, different other types of meditations, or different other types of religious activities. So only the Vaishnavas are spiritually awake because they exactly know what to do and what not to do. For no one except the Vaishnavas genuinely endeavor to attain the supreme spiritual goal. Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita, Manushanam sahasreshu kaschit yatiti siddhaye, that out of millions and millions of people, someone makes an effort on this path. Right? Most have no interest. Kaschit yatiti siddhaye. Yatatanam api siddhanam mam tu veti kaschana. And out of those who do endeavor, yatatanam means who endeavor, some attain perfection, and out of those, some finally attain me. So those who are endeavoring the right way, they are none other than the Vaishnavas. So those who are spiritually awake develop ruchi, means taste, for the practice of chanting the holy name on the strength of their faith in the scriptures. And from this, they easily develop an attraction for serving and associating with Vaishnavas. However, those who are spiritually unconscious cannot awaken their faith in scripture and thus do not adopt the practice of Krishna now. They only worship the deity of Krishna as a matter of social custom. Right? So this is also, we had discussed before, with Vaishnav Dharam, right? The adulterated Vaishnav Dharam, where they also worship the deities. They also worship the deities of Radha Krishna or Lakshmi Narayan, but more as a, he says, as a social custom or some sort of a ritual, or simply as a way to focus the mind. They don't believe that this deity is transcendental. This day and this form is transcendental, means it's eternal. It's not a temporary form. So he says, consequently, the taste for associating with Vaishnavas and serving them is not awakened in their hearts. So he says, so therefore, it is these people are not able to get association of the Vaishnavas. So he says, therefore, the most important thing that one has to do is to take the association of devotees. So, because without their association, it is not possible to understand this. Very, very difficult. So, see, the association of devotees is the most important part of our devotional life, because without that, the Maya is very, very strong. It can anytime delude us. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in his instructions to Sanatan Goswami, called Sanatan Shiksha, he says, Sadhu Sanghe Krishna Bhakte Shraddha Yadi Hoy, Bhakti Phal Prem Hai, Sansar Yaikshay. That if one associates with the devotee, Sadhu Sanghe Krishna Bhakti, which one who is a devotee of Krishna, then if one associates with such a person, then his faith in devotional service to Krishna will also arise. Shraddha Yadi Hoy. He will also develop that faith. Bhakti Phal Prem Hoy. And what is the fruit of this bhakti that he will develop by associating with the devotees? He will develop Krishna Prem, that dormant love for Krishna which is in the heart, that will awaken. And Sansar Haikshay, like this, he will become free from the material existence. So therefore, it's only by the association of devotees that one can make spiritual progress. Mahaprabhu says, Mahat Kripa Vina Kaun Karme Bhakti Naye, Krishna Bhakti Dure Rahu Sansar Nahikshay. That without the mercy of pure devotees, Kaun Karme Bhakti Naye, one can do anything that one. You can try all kind of sadhan, you can try all kind of processes, but unless there is a mercy of a pure devotee, he says, Krishna Bhakti Dure Raha Sansar Nahikshay. What to talk of attaining the mercy of Krishna or the bhakti of Krishna, one's material existence will also not come to an end if one does not associate with the devotees. Therefore, the association is the most important thing. When Jad Bharat, So in Bhagavatam, the story of Bharat Maharaj, you must have heard, in his third life when he became Jad Bharat, and Maharaj Rahugana, when he was, carrying his palanquin, and then, because he was trying to step not on the ants on the ground. So Rahugana became very angry, and when he spoke, then Jad Bharat, who was Maharaj Bharat in his previous to previous life, gave beautiful instructions to him. He says, Rahugana etat tapasa na yati, na cha ijjaya nirvapanat grihatva, na chandasa na ev jalagni surya vina mahatpado rajo abhishekam. He says that one cannot attain the understanding of the Supreme Lord by performing any kind of austerities. No type of tapasya, no type of rituals. One can perform even severe austerities like, standing deep in the cold water or standing among fire. Many yogis, they perform these kind of tapasyas, these kind of austerities. Today also, if you go to Himalayas, there are those Nag Babas who completely live naked in the coldest regions of the Himalayas. He says by doing all of this, you can maybe control your senses to some extent, but he says you cannot attain the you cannot attain mukti, you cannot attain bhakti of Krishna. The only way to attain is if you smear the dust of the feet of the devotees on your head, right? So bathe yourself with the dust of the lotus feet of the devotees. So this is what he's saying, that by associating with the devotees, one can understand. So then Lahadi Mahasaya says, I have understood Krishna Tattva and Jeev Tattva. Now please explain Maya Tattva. This also we had discussed in the past. So just very briefly, he explains that Maya, or the illusory energy, is the external potency of Krishna. And Maya remains far from Krishna and Krishna Bhakti, just as a shadow remains distant from light. So when we stand, our shadow falls on the back because where the light is not coming. So it says where there is no Krishna Surya Sam Maya hai andhakar, jahan Krishna taha nahi Maya adhikar. So Krishna is like the spiritual sun, and Maya, or the illusory energy, is like the darkness, the shadow of Krishna. So Maya manifests all the material things in this world, including our material body, the planets, everything that we see, the air, sky, mind, even a subtle body, not only just a physical body, but even the subtle body is manifested from this external energy of Krishna called the Bahiranga Shakti. But when we are liberated, when the living entity is liberated, his spiritual body is untainted by matter. So then we give up our material subtle body as well. So now he says the more the jiva is ensnared by Maya, the more he is diverted from Krishna, and the more he is aloof from Maya, the more he is drawn towards Krishna. So this is something, an important instruction for us who are aspiring in the devotional life, that we should consciously, I was explaining once before, also mindfully, we should see all the desires that come in the mind and try to not get carried away by them, right? We live in a world where attaining more and more of material possessions, attaining more and more of the various things is glorified. But we see all around us that people, even after accumulating all of the gadgets and all the kind of technology and everything, they're still not happy. They're still more depressed and more stressed because these things cannot give you real happiness. So at least as devotees, we should be conscious. Of course, what is required, we should certainly keep it, take it, but also not accumulate too much, because then all our energy, our valuable time is going to be wasted in taking care of them. So he says the more you try to stay aloof from the illusory energy, the more you will be towards Krishna, right? So the mind has to think of something. If it is going to think more of the material things, it is going to get entangled there. The more you take it away from it and engage in Krishna, the more it will gravitate towards him. So he says the material universe is created by the will of Krishna just to facilitate the material enjoyment of Baddha Jiva, the conditioned living entities. It is only a jail and not the eternal residence of the Jivas. So he's giving briefly the reason why the material world is created. Why? Because the Jivas who want to enjoy independent of Krishna, for them he has created very mercifully this world, because then only they will, by experiencing all the miseries of this world, they will finally come to this understanding that this is not a place of happiness. This is dukhalayam ashashvatam, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. It's a place, dukh means misery. It's a house of miseries, and it is temporary. So then Lahari Mahasaya says that now, so he has explained to him the Bhagavad Tattva, the Jeev Tattva, and the Maya Tattva. He says, now please explain the relationship between them. So then he explains what is the relationship of the Jiva and Krishna. We have heard many times, Jiva Swarup hoy Krishner Nityadas, that the living entity is the eternal servant of Krishna. And what is the relationship between the Maya and the Jiva? The Maya, or the illusory energy, is like the prison house. He just explained the material world is a prison house for the Jiva. It keeps the living entity entangled in the material world. So one Devi is called Durga Devi, right? So Durga comes from the word Durga. Durga means a fort or a prison. So she is the one which is the guarding this the prison of the material world. And then people worship Durga Devi only for more material things, to get more entangled in the same material world. So this is the relationship between the Jiva is controlled by the material energy. Right? And then what is the relationship between between Krishna and the material energy? Krishna is the master of material energy. So therefore, Maya cannot control Krishna, but one who takes shelter of Krishna can also overcome the influence of Maya, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Devi hi esha gunmai mam maya durattaya mam evye prapadyante mayam itam tarantite. He says this material energy is certainly very difficult to overcome. Devi esha gunmai, of the three modes of material nature, certainly very difficult to overcome. But he says, Mam evye prapadante, one who surrenders unto me unconditionally, I deliver them from the shackles of material energy. So he says, by the strength of association with saintly people in this world, one repeatedly practices the chanting of the holy name. In due course of time, one attains Krishna's mercy. And when one is situated in one's own perfected spiritual form in the spiritual world, one drinks the rasa of service to Shri Krishna. This is the confidential relationship that exists between these three fundamental realities. Three fundamental realities, the Bhagavad Tattva, Jeev Tattva, and Maya Tattva. And understanding them, we can see what is our relationship with material world. Therefore, we can see that I am different from matter. My relationship is with Krishna. And by association with saintly devotees and by practicing the process of devotion, I can overcome, by the mercy of Krishna, the clutches of Maya. So last question, and then we will see if anyone has questions. So then the next question, Lahari Mahasaya says, well, if knowledge is obtained by academic study, must one be a scholar to become a Vaishnav? So, we are studying so many of these questions. There's so many scriptures. So he says the knowledge, typically we understand that through academia, through academic study, one attains knowledge. And is it required is it required to become a scholar to become a Vaishnava? Is that a prerequisite? So Babaji says, no, one does not have to study or to learn any particular language to become a Vaishnava. So he says it to become, when we talk of knowledge, is not from an academic um, perspective, right? Last time also we were discussing that if we just do this from simply from an academic perspective, then we will never understand the gist of the scriptures. Becoming a scholar is not does not mean that you have become a devotee. There are many Sanskrit scholars who have who can chant all the 700 verses of Bhagavad Gita. They can even chant many thousands of verses of Bhagavatam, but still they are not devotees. Today is the disappearance day of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada. He himself was a great scholar. When he went to college in Calcutta, so there in the textbook Chaitanya Charitamrita and some books like this were also there as part of the curriculum. But the teachers, the professors, they were teaching it simply from an academic point of view. And Sri Bhakti Siddhant, he was just a young boy at that time. He would question them, and they were just dumbfounded. They could not answer his questions because their understanding was purely from an academic, from an historical perspective. They had no devotion for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. See, this is where, and I can say a lot of people read Bhagavad Gita, but they're still not able to give up their bad habits. Why? Because they've not read Gita from a devotional perspective. They've not read Gita in the association of devotees, and that is the difference. But the same Bhagavad Gita, if you read in the association of devotees, then it is very easy to give up all kind of bad habits. So he says just becoming a scholar is not the qualification to become a Vaishnava. In order to dispel the illusion of Maya, the Jiva should take shelter at the feet of a genuine Guru who is a true Vaishnava. That is more important. The Vaishnava Guru can impart Sambandh Gyan by his words and behavior. This is known as Diksha and Shiksha. So very important, he's saying. He says that a true Guru, a true Vaishnava, through his words, through his instructions, through his katha, and his behavior. So there are two ways that we learn from the devotees. One, through their instructions, and the other is through their behavior. And sometimes behavior or acharan is even more important than the words. Why? Because if someone is simply speaking the words but is not practicing himself, then he is cheating himself and he's cheating others also, right? So that's why an acharya is one who not only just gives instructions, but also practices what he's saying. If I tell you chant the holy name, but I myself am not chanting, I myself am not chanting even 16 rounds, what to talk of chanting constantly? How can I speak on chanting of the holy name, right? So therefore, one should be practicing what one is speaking and the behavior, how they interact with other devotees, how they are engaged in the mood with the mood of humility in seva. Therefore, a devotees should have a very responsible behavior, because by their behavior, people either develop faith or sometimes people get very disturbed because when they see a devotee. That's why here, as we have been going along, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is giving a very high definition of who is a real Vaishnava. Right? So simply by wearing tilak or wearing kanthimala, one does not become a Vaishnava. One has to actually practice and also express that in one's behavior. So this is what he says, that this is known as Diksha, initiation. So of course there is a specific ritual, there's a specific ceremony. That's an important part, but that is just start of a process. The actual initiation is when one accepts the instructions of the Guru, and through his instructions and observing his behavior also does the same in his own life, then also takes follows the process the same way and also behaves in the same way, right? So this is a very deep instruction, and we should try and understand. After this, he will ask further things about Diksha and Shiksha. So we'll continue that next time. And next time we should be able to finish this fourth chapter. Okay. So we'll finish today's class here. And anyone has any questions, we can discuss them now.
I got a question for you, Prodigy. Thank you for doing this class. Sorry I was late this time. This may be a two-part question. So have the conditioned souls ever taken residence in the spiritual realm?
So the answer to that question is no. That the conditioned souls have never been in the spiritual world, because if they were in the spiritual world, why would they ever fall down from there, right? Right, because in the spiritual world there is no impact, no effect of Maya. There is no effect of jealousy. So why would someone who is with Krishna, who is in, that means Krishna's beauty is not that enchanting that one can, even being with Krishna, fall down. So if one falls down from the spiritual world, then there is no guarantee that going back there one would not fall back again, right? So therefore, we were never in the spiritual world. That's why Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and in the later on he will explain in even more detail, that's why it is called the marginal potency. That Shakti, that energy which is between the spiritual world and the material world, was the conditioned living entities were never in the material world. Now, some have that kind of understanding, but that's not correct as per our scriptures.
Okay, so then my next question would be, you said that the conditioned souls wanted to enjoy apart from Krishna. But if they were never with Krishna, if they were never there in the spiritual world, then how is that the case?
Yeah, that's a good question. So see, this is where he and this will come. The same questions will be asked in great detail later on in Jayabdharam also. But the point here to understand is that this is an inconceivable thing, right? So our acharyas, to give some explanation, have tried to describe it. But again, this is, all through today's class also, and before we were understanding that, but through words and through this kind of description, it is difficult and almost impossible to understand, right? This is something which is beyond the capability of the words to even explain. But the way our acharyas have explained, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur will also explain later on, that from that marginal potency, marginal area, there you have. So, for example, if let's say if I'm standing on in one place, and on one side I can see I'm not there. So margin means that you are not there. So for example, let's say you're standing on one road. Let's say it's assumed that that's a margin. On one side there's a party going on, and the other side there is a katha going on. There's a discourse on Bhagavad Gita going on, but you are standing on the road. So from that road you can see both the place, or there's a line, you can see both the ways, but you are not in either one of them, right? So you're neither in the place where the party is going on, neither you are in the place where katha is going on, but from that position you can see both of them. Now at that point you have independent desire or independent decision you can take. You can either decide to go where the party is going on, or you can decide where there is a lecture on Bhagavad Gita going on, right? It could, now when we say see, you could experience that in many different ways. You could hear that music coming from party music from one side, from other side there is the sound of kirtan coming, and you can decide to go one or the other way. So similarly, now the Tastha Shakti from the Jiva had that ability to at least understand this versus the other, right? So therefore chose to come to the material world. If he was in the spiritual world to begin with, then the problem with that is that the only way he can come to the material world that when illusion comes and overpowers him, or he develops this feeling of jealousy towards Krishna, right? Because I want to enjoy like him, so develops that competitive nature. But so that means in the spiritual world also these things exist. Then how can it be the spiritual world? It cannot be pure. That means because when these moods exist there, so that's the reason, to explain, it is said that this is the tatastha shakti, the marginal potency.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is one question that devotees have. Gurudev, there's very nice series of books called Walking with the Saint. You can also download from purebhakti.com. We should have some copies at the temple also. You can probably get it online, buy it. And in the year 2010, so this is like every day Gurudev, when he would go in the morning for a walk, the devotees will go with him. And during the walk, he will sit down. And also after the end of the walk, he will sit and answer devotees' questions. And beautiful interactions at that time. So in the year 2010, a lot of devotees were asking. Throughout, of course, devotees will ask these kind of questions a lot. But in that particular year, I have seen many times this discussion taking place. And again, end of the day, we have to understand that it is inconceivable. And end of the day, it is more important to know that we are stuck in the material world, how to get out of it. How we came here in the first place, it is important, but at the same time, it's immaterial, because if you are drowning in the ocean, it is more important to figure out how to get out of it. Not so important that how did I, come into the ocean and I'm drowning in the first place, right? There was a reason why I'm drowning, but now that you are drowning, it's more important to figure out how to get out of it, right? Okay. So anyone else, any other question?
And I have that specific book, so I'll check that out.
Okay, very nice. You have that Walking with the Saint?
I do, and the one from 2010.
Oh yes, that's great. Yeah, try to read. I think there's several conversations which are focused on this particular topic.
Great, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, then thank you once again, everyone, for joining. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free. You can send it later on also through WhatsApp. Okay. Okay, thank you everyone. Hare Krishna, Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.